Yesterday's video, we talked about your character stats and how we play to our strengths or potentially our weaknesses. One of the things I mentioned was that to further develop your career, you may actually focus on your strengths in terms of building up the things you're already good at to take those even further, since, like I mentioned, oftentimes what gets your foot in the door is sort of a focused strength or area. Now, the other thing I want to make sure doesn't get lost in that thought, though, is the idea that you don't want to wind up putting yourself in a box, and you certainly don't want to let others put you in a box either. This is the sort of thing that can begin happening if we begin to conflate what's best for our career singularly as though that's the only thing which is best for us. And again, this is not to downplay the importance or seriousness or significance of career path, professional life, but it's to not mistake that for the totality of ourselves, our expectations, our skills, our worldview, our experiences, and so on. When people talk about the benefits and things that come out of colleges, and obviously it's a complex field, the costs, at least in the United States, are pretty staggeringly high. For many people, it still winds up being a worthwhile investment depending on the field and path and timing and all kinds of other things, more than we're going to crack the nut of in just this short discussion. One of the things that sometimes get lost in that discussion is that while they're often looking at its career returns in terms of, how's it going to help them land a higher paying job, etc., part of the appeal, part of what it's really trying to get at is this idea that it's life enriching, that it's beneficial to just give us more perspective in the world to learn a broader variety of fields. That is, of course, the attitude of a liberal arts institution, that even if someone's there for a technical related degree or science degree or, for that matter, English or whatever other skill they might be focusing on in school, that they're still also obligated as part of the requirements to be taking other courses that fulfill basic collegiate level understanding of other disciplines. Now, I mention this in part because it's the sort of thing that we still, through the many benefits of the internet, have the possibility to inform ourselves on, to educate ourselves on, to gain the benefits of, without having to necessarily do it through university. And again, it's complex. For many people, it's a good choice, not necessarily the right fit for everybody. Doesn't have to be. Can't answer that question in this time frame, and like I say, person by person, very specific. But it is to say that when we're out there searching for which courses to take, which online resources to learn from, and so on, I think it's useful for us to balance out, in some point, the things that are career relevant, the things that are skills that we want to be able to have because they're marketable. But on the other hand, also recognize that there's many other things that can add depth to our lives, enjoyment to our experience, fulfillment to our experiences, and maybe connect us to more people that don't necessarily have any touch or connection or obvious relation whatsoever to the professional life. Now, occasionally it's argued that sometimes those indirect things wind up having indirect benefits out of the professional life. There's this classic story of when Steve Jobs took a typography class well before computers had nice fonts, and how that helped play a role in the development of fancy fonts supports on early Mac computers, and later, obviously, the myriad of the computer technical space we have today on the internet and otherwise. But I think that's even still missing the point of, even if the typography class, the banjo class, the fencing class, the painting, the sculpting, the poetry, whatever it is you're doing, to realize that it doesn't have to indirectly pay off in the career to have been worthwhile for other reasons. And what I like about this is that this helps kind of broaden and open the discussion about how we want different things out of life, how what we want out of it is different than just being able to sustain it. And again, that's important. I'm not trying to downplay the relevance of that. Only to say that I think we do ourselves and everyone else a disservice if we start to try to put ourselves or everyone else too much in the box of, what's the rate of return on that human being? Right? How instrumentalized are they? That something gets lost in that. And that occasionally, if there are sacrifices or trade-offs to that side of our lives in the interest of making sure that we feel fulfilled, that we are connecting with others, that we feel like we are living an enriched experience, whatever that means to each person, which is going to be different for everybody, then that may be a beneficial trade-off any given person may choose, and that may take the form of, again, something as simple as having some more variety in their informational diet, in terms of not just trying to stay on top of things that have utility, but also realizing that there's many other things we might use to define ourselves in terms of a more balanced sort of lifestyle, in terms of balanced set of interests, in terms of having some other things that are disconnected from the things we do so well. And as one last little note on this, I think sometimes the benefit of it can actually be hidden in having something we do which is not something we are exceptional at. That when it's your career, you've certainly got an obligation, duty to your employer, to yourself, to your family, or others you support, whatever situation may be, to do it as well as you can and to be the best at it. And if you find you're something better at something else that pays better, then to consider quite seriously a pivot into that line. Whereas when we have a hobby, a recreation, outside interest, bird watching, whatever it might be, photography that we don't do professionally, whatever it might be, that it becomes something where it helps humble us a little bit to have that outlet in our lives where at the same time we can recognize there are people who do it at professional level, who do it much further, who write professional poetry, who make professional music, whatever it might be, but at the same time, A, don't feel that pressure on ourselves to do it, which allows us to kind of take our pace at it, and then B, to also just sort of, again, have some humility that comes from doing something that we're not aiming to be the best at, as we might be in our career track. That every now and then I'll meet somebody who they only ever stay close to the things that they know. It's especially common among adults who take themselves very seriously, and they'll only ever touch or talk about the subjects in their professional domain of expertise, and beyond that, they won't say anything about it. They won't do anything about it. And it results in is actually this bit of weakness, where they perceive this extrapolation of their skill in that area to other topics, which when I say they won't touch them, I mean they won't really test their assumptions, not that they won't speak to them, but they'll feel very confident about those areas in a way that if they have something else in their life balancing it out, where they do it, and they realize that maybe they're only so-so at the skateboard, they're only so-so at playing piano, they're only so-so at whatever it might be, that can be a healthy part of our lives, and how we treat others, and how we appreciate the skills and energy of talents of others around us. That's the thought for the day, just not let stuff put too much in a box, to evaluate and the learning resources, other things we're interested in, things outside of our main key core professional areas, and how they can really life enriching, whether or not it has anything to do with kind of the main strengths that we have. I just want to make sure I didn't overstate yesterday's point of, yeah, like for career option, it is good to double down in a domain, but obviously there's more to it than that of what we want out of life.